The King's Dream Podcast, episode number 2. We got a very special guest in the house, producer extraordinaire, entrepreneur, motivational speaker. This guy has worked with everybody from Kendrick Lamar to Ab-Soul to Murs. Ladies and gentlemen, Curtis King.
Hey, hello.
We need some
I
sound
get the
effects.
golf claps. Yes. Oh, even the reggae horns too. I live for the reggae horns. That's when you know it's real. How you doing? How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm feeling good, man.
What's happening?
Life is definitely happening. Since the beginning of this year, I took a transition. We were talking about it earlier, but as I look back on the last few months, which have been crazy and definitely have been life-changing for me, I went from, if most people don't know, being an artist and producer and really being kind of behind the scenes of things. People who know of me, it's more of a regional thing or more of a, association with another name type of thing where, touring with Murs a few years ago, opened me up to another audience. Doing music with Ab-Soul, of course, opened me up to a huge audience. All of these things, contribute to that, but there's still the question of who are you? What it is that you do and why should we care? And, I had a few different experiences that happened over the last few years that really shape my mindset now. And, I say it's crazy because I'm talking to you, bro, talking to you at the Murs show at House of Blues last month. Or not last month, I'm sorry, December 2015. Honestly, that night when I left, it wasn't even just our particular conversation. It was one of a few that I had that night. It changed the trajectory of things and it really put in perspective, what fills me up.
Yeah.
And I'll say the last few months has just been the most fulfilling and it's not even about giving back, but really understanding the idea of what value is and how people attain their success and knowing that it's not from any get-rich-quick schemes. It's not from, any secrets to becoming anything. It's literally about what can you give to people that is of true value. And when I understood that, I read a book called The Go Giver. It literally changed everything. So I've been doing these YouTube videos, Artist Marketing 911, Producer Motivation 911. In addition, I've been doing music. I had a management team that I parted ways with at the top of the year. And now it's back to just me, honestly, just being in charge of my business and not really pursuing placements, just really being in charge of my business and doing all the things that, in the back of my mind, I had a gut instinct that, man, this probably can work. But now they're actually working. Yeah.
So I've known you for a couple years now, and we came around each other towards the tail end of the Ratchet Still Jockin'.
Yeah.
And you've always been a guy that it feels like you kind of reinvent yourself every few years.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's fun, it's playful, and then all of a sudden you had the dope music and you were popping with the music and you and Noah, you guys were doing stuff, and then all of a sudden then you're doing a record with Murs, and then you got more placements with Ab, and then you're killing it with the beat game. But this last time around, it seems like you mentioned it back when we hung out at that Murs show, a light switch went off, and then the Artist Marketing 911 videos came, the Producer Motivation 911 videos came, where you took your wealth of experience and you said, how can I actually add value to people's lives without just being an entertainer?
Right. And you know what's crazy is that I wish, and of course, in retrospect, when I tell this story and I tell people about how it actually happened, it sounds like it was that cut and dry. It literally was walking through the dark for a long time. Praying about it, of course, and talking to my fiance. But I'll be honest with you, when I left that show at the House of Blues, and, you guys killed it that night, John killed it, and, I talked to Murs, and we hadn't really talked for a few months, but after I talked, I left there feeling like the most lost that I ever felt in my life. the irony of that too, because if you look at it from the outside looking in, it's like, look at this dude. He's worked with, all the people I've worked with. You got the full project with Murray. All of these things look like things that should make somebody happy, but and they're things that I'm obviously very thankful for. But when it comes down to what actually makes you happy, when it comes down to what actually fills you up, I challenge people that think that it's going to be something that you do for yourself. Right. I really feel like it's going to be something that you give. You give us something to the people, and as much as people think it's like, oh, thank you, Curtis, for taking your time to share your wealth of knowledge, I don't look at it as me like, the guy that's blessing you with this. I don't look at it like that. I feel like it's an arrogant standpoint. I feel like it's honestly me doing my duty to ensure my success, and my success is dependent upon how much value can I give to then in turn become a valuable figure. And I'll tell you, after feeling I was lost, bro. I was honestly lost. I drove home. I called my fiance. I said, yo, I don't know what I am doing. I don't know what's going on. And, mind you, this is off of the strength of, I had just had one of the top 25 albums on Hip Hop DX, right? And just being, I still was still independent, of course, and all of these different things were starting to open itself up, but it just wasn't filling me up. And I really feel like I got that answer driving home, and I came across a book that a friend of mine, Art Bars, was telling me to read called The Go-Giver. And just the timing of it was perfect. It's a 3-hour audio book, and I listened to it, and it really put in perspective what the word value meant. And it changed my life. Like, we say that all the time, but I really feel like that changed the course of my life, because now that's literally my purpose, is no matter what I'm doing. Because, I was ready to quit doing music because I was like, I felt like it's so self-serving.
Yep.
I feel like even though we're giving music, we're still asking them to please download my song, download this, share this, like this. It's so self-serving that it didn't feel like it was in line with my new purpose. Yeah. But the more I started figuring out, well, is the music I'm making valuable for people? Yeah. So I'm actually doing a disservice to myself and the people.
How do you strike that balance, though? We talk about music is, in a way, very narcissistic. Right. It is all about how can we build platforms and get our voice and images and sounds heard. But as a man of purpose, man of faith, man of God, how do you find that balance in the entertainment industry?
I say it like this, and this is why I've since sort of distanced myself from the industry as it is. When it comes to me as a personal business entity, that is the best situation it's ever been in. I'm not actively pursuing placements anymore, and I know people are like, oh my God, he must have saw something and changed it, and nothing like that happened. It was just, I saw the reality of what this game can be, and a lot of stuff is just smoke and mirrors. And for me, it's almost like the kid, seeing that Santa Claus is not real. And I saw it. It's like you looked into the dressing room and you saw the dude putting the beard on. It's like, yo, that's not what it's all about. Right. And I feel like I got a few peeps in where I was like, you know what? I know what I'm doing. Yeah. When I started meeting people that I used to look up to, and I won't name no names, but people that I used to look up to, and I finally met them, and I figured out this dude don't even have the answer. Right. He's still trying to figure out his way, and he's 30, 20, whatever years he's into this game, and I'm like, I really know what I'm talking about, and it's almost like having that confidence. So the way that I strike my balance now is this. I say, I'm not going to release a song unless I'm not going to make a song. First of all, it starts in the studio. I'm not going to make a song that is just for me. Right. I'm making a song that is probably about something I'm going through, but it's with the intentions of, I feel like somebody would literally have the same benefit as if you use music as your medicine. Right. And you use medicine for a migraine. You go to Walgreens and you get an Advil or whatever. If you use music as your medicine, then I need to basically supply that medicine. Right. If I'm supplying that medicine, if I have the thing that could cure your migraine and I don't do it, it's almost actually a sin to have that talent and to not give that. So when I saw it from that perspective and didn't look at it as, well, I need to feed my family, and it was, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, but it feels still so self-serving. The moment that I said that me giving this to the general public is actually of value, and people sharing it is just a part of that value spreading, my language started changing. I never ask people to share this or like this or do this. I invite them. So my whole perspective of it changed, and what I started experiencing was that, in the beginning was a very slow process because people are not generally used to an artist going about things like that. They look at it like, okay, this is a little bit different, but people slowly start coming and they start understanding that this is just me all around. So I seamlessly go from doing these 10-minute artist marketing, producer motivation videos and jumping straight to a song or straight to a beat because it's all an extension of the same human being in the same art form. So as long as I'm giving value, I really don't find any difficulty, in a very narcissistic environment being of the people.
Yeah.
But as a person like starting off, just kind of figuring out how the entrepreneurial world works, how music works, where did you personally find like practical fruit from giving value, like where you knew that you were creating value, like from other people?
Well, you know what was the sort of the eye opener for me was that when I started listening to a podcast, where I started listening to this Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, where this guy John Lee.
It's a podcast.
It's a podcast.
Kind of like we're doing.
Kind of like we're doing right now. I'm sorry if I'm doing a shameless promotion of somebody else's podcast, but I listened to this particular podcast, and as I listen to it, he talks to entrepreneurs. The host of it talks to entrepreneurs every single day. Every day is a new podcast. And 30 minutes, he'll sit with them. He'll ask them about their high points, their low points. He'll ask them about their streams of revenue. Yeah. And every single one of them almost every single one of them said, one of my streams of income is teaching. And I'm like, how does a CEO who has millions and millions of dollars and all these employees find time to teach? I'm like, that's weird. And then I'm like, I take that. And then I started seeing that all their low points felt so similar. But I'm like, why is it so different in the business world and the tech world in comparison to hip hop? Hip hop has these rules that on face value, if you ask any other industry, they don't make any sense. Right. But they're rules that are given by people who, for the sake of relevance, continue these old, rules or whatever. And people follow these rules and have no idea why they follow them. And we end up being a culture that doesn't teach each other. The young ones rebel against the old ones because they didn't teach them. The old ones rebel against the young ones because now they want to learn how to do Bandcamp, but nobody will teach them. And it's it's this thing that
SoundCloud, right?
With the SoundCloud, like things like that we don't even think twice about. Like we can do that stuff in our sleep, but people don't think of it. There's a 38-year-old OG who may even be a legend who doesn't know how the ethics or the etiquette of a Twitter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe you can't. It's hard to tell an OG, man, don't put those filters on that Instagram post because it looks cheesy. Like, no, I think it looks dope compared to what he had. It looks. Right. So I think that once I started realizing that, I was basically lied to, and that's when I made this video on YouTube that just went crazy. Called The Biggest Lie in Hip Hop. And that's when the actual authors of the book that I said changed my life, like he said the video brought him to tears. And I'm like, if this guy right here who wrote this book, who obviously is, both the two authors who made the book, if he's a millionaire, right? And he has the time to sit there and respond to a comment, I don't care if it's him or an assistant. The effort to me said, I can't even get my favorite rapper to tweet back, after I told him that his album was amazing and this and that. All I said about his book was that I feel like this is probably one of the most important life lessons I ever was taught through a book. Yeah. And he immediately responds. And my birthday comes around, he wishes me a happy birthday. And I'm like, this is crazy how accessible they are, and they're more successful. So then I started really looking at it like, what else have I been lied about? So honestly, for anybody starting out, I'll tell you, if something smells fishy and doesn't feel right, ask questions. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying to rebel against everybody and everything, but ask questions.
That's good. And I would say if you're just starting out, we talked about this on the last episode, Eric and Anthony were sharing how, master your craft, perfect your craft, like be great at your craft. And use that as a means to just be excellent and be dope.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's huge, right? As a producers, I'm sure there's a time where like, all right, like I got to study what dope snares are, right?
I honestly think there's like a lot of things besides just owning your craft that still like I need to learn to how to create and manifest value within my craft that's outside of just being good at what I'm doing. I think you guys have insight there that's something I want to know more of.
Right.
Right.
Well, because everybody's an expert at something.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you're a guy and you've been rapping for a year, you probably shouldn't be putting up YouTube tutorials on how to rap. Unless you're just amazing.
Well, not even that.
Yeah.
You know what I argue with that is that and I get this all the time because I get like 17-year-olds who say, "Man, when I'm your age, like I'm gonna be giving back," and I'm like, "No, you have a little brother in your household right now who knows nothing about what you just learned over the last year.
Yeah.
Teach him."
Yeah.
It's just about who you actually. I'm not saying that person should give knowledge to the general public.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing we're saying basically. But I do feel like that it's that culture of, you're too young to be giving advice, bro.
Well, yeah.
And I get on YouTube right now. I know that if I want to find a tutorial about After Effects, it may be a 13 or 14-year-old kid teaching me how to make me clone myself, make me clone myself on video. And that's just the reality of it now. But no, I understand your point though. I definitely.
Each one teach one.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think we do, especially in hip hop and urban culture, like we do such a disservice of mentorship, of helping each other, that there becomes this generational disconnect.
Yes.
And so like me, like I'm always looking at Eric and Anthony, like, no, explain SoundCloud to me. Like when is it appropriate to, like, what is a comment? How do you share? What does a repost do? Right? Like I literally am still learning as I'm going, and I think everyone's an expert in something.
Right.
And so, like you said, not everyone needs to create a YouTube series based on the area, but you can start right where you're at. You can start with the community you're in. You can start with the relationship. Your little brother, your little sister.
Right.
You start right there so that you're actually adding value to someone else's life.
And I say this too, is that, what constitutes an expert? That was my biggest problem, was that even when I did my videos, and somebody can make the argument like, oh yeah, Curtis is accomplished when it comes to, getting his placements. Of course he can give value, but I'm like, that's not necessarily true. Here's the thing about it, and I learned it from the same podcast, is that in a courthouse, an expert is constituted, an expert witness. A judge says this is an expert witness is just somebody who knows more about a particular situation or a particular event. He knows more than 95% of the people in the room about it.
That's
right?
Good.
So when I heard it from that perspective, I was like, if that's an expert witness, even if it's somebody who's a 17-year-old that's just getting started, we know 17-year-olds right now that are super talented when it comes to finding harmonies and melodies, and his particular technique may teach a 40-year-old who's been trying to grasp that concept for the last, 30-odd years. And I think that's where the value comes. I think it's honestly having that self-realization that, this is something that I do that is actually a God-given gift that's extraordinary, that if I'm able to break it down into words, it can be of value. You know what I mean? So I really feel like it's that culture that, and if that's my impact, that's my impact. I would have no problem with that. But I really want to see more folks, and I was always taught too, when you learn something, the way that it stays embedded in you is to teach somebody immediately how you did it.
That's good.
Because then when you teach it, you're sitting there by step and you're going over it like, wait a minute, why was that important again? Yeah. And you end up revisiting the most important things that you should. But man, I think that everybody has some value to give. I think that you got to sit with yourself. You got to find the things that you like, the things that just make you itch and irritated and all of those things. And once you figure out the things that, like I told Willie B one time. Willie B's produced many records for for J. Cole
Rigor
and
Mortis, right?
Rigor Mortis. He did J. Cole 05 or 04 Adolescence. I forget what the name. I think it's 05 Adolescence. But he did that record for J. Cole, and I'm like, I talked to him, and I'm telling him, I said, I think honestly, our success in this lifetime, when it comes to especially us as creators, I feel like it's determined by those moments when, we're searching to like spike off dopamines. You know what I mean? Like these dopamines that happen when we find the perfect snare, or we have the perfect mix, or we have the perfect delivery. That feeling when you deliver the perfect verse and you're sitting there and it's like you almost get goosebumps, like, oh my God, like that. I really like deliver that exactly how I envisioned it. I think the more that you're able to sort of control what the influences of those dopamines, I think the more you're able to control your success. So as I'm seeing these producers, I'm realizing they're not competing with other producers to be great. They're listening to a snare or a mix and saying, It literally has a physical effect on me until it gets right. I'm going to obsess over the snare. We look at it from the outside point of view and say, man, his drums are masterful. He's a genius. In his mind, he's looking like, you don't know how many steps it took to get here because I'm so obsessive over having the right drums.
That's good.
You know, for somebody else to look at it like, oh, I got to compete with that. But it's like, you don't have the same drive or the same, irritation that person has to get that dopamine to spike off. So I really feel like that's literally the moments that we are our greatest, when we're the most honest with, those feelings and those things that spike off for us.
Eric, you're kind of on the other side of this where I'd say you're 10, 12 years in, right, as a producer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're
I've been producing for about 7, but I haven't really been committed to it for maybe even a year or 2, even so.
Yeah. Do you feel sometimes, because you're younger, you're newer, do you feel do you feel sometimes out of place sharing your input and sharing your ideas and sharing your insight, maybe because you don't feel like you're an authority figure yet? Like, as a younger guy, is there a tension there for you to share your ideas?
That's for sure. For instance, like when I give critiques upon any of the records that we were working on with Kings, like when I told Ruslan's records suck and I only like 2 songs out of the 10 songs he gave. Yeah, that was really hard.
We were on tour. I showed these guys like 12 songs. I'm like, the album's almost done for rap.
I was like, it's far from done. Far from done.
This cat was like, you got maybe 2.
Oh, wow.
I was like, and then I even produced like 8 of those records.
You are?
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about that, though? And the reason why I understand why those situations happen, because who are you presenting your album to when it's actually done?
Yeah.
You're basically relinquishing all power that you had over it to the general public. Well, the general public consists of, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 29-year-olds, people who've been doing music for a few years. Yeah. The one thing that we all have the right to is an opinion, and we're very... most times we're very honest about what we like until we get around other people who have an influence on that. But, sometimes it's their truth, and sometimes you have to respect that.
Yeah. So how do you balance that? Like that tension of like, I'm a younger guy, but I know I have something to value. So, and you're very bold in that. Like, when you feel strongly about it, like, you will be like, yo.
I just don't think I can lie, to be honest. In my body language, like, just who I am, I can be like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But, my face, my expression says, like, yo, this sucks. Like, I trying to take it from a humble approach. Understand that my opinion is not fact.
Right.
So, like, as being young, I have the tension to want to feel entitled to my opinion and believe that it's fact and feel arrogant. Right. So I do need to step back, but I do need to give my insight, because there are certain things that come from my own perspective that you don't have.
Yeah. Right. And those things are valuable, right? Like again, not to sound cliche, but like, listen to the kids. You know what I mean? Like culture, pop culture, music culture, hip hop culture. Like it's always historically been a young person's thing.
The only thing is, I don't really have a discography. I don't have a resume. I don't have a resume. So it's like someone getting hired to a new job and they're just a salesperson and they're trying to explain to their manager, like, yo, this would probably be a better marketing strategy, or you should probably hire this type of person. Like, because like we have the experience from the floor, seeing how the customers react while the manager is most of the time in the office. Right.
And somebody that's younger is closer to being a genuine consumer of
that
music.
Demographic.
Exactly.
Versus being... we make music and we have our audience in mind, right? And someone that's younger is thinking, yeah, but is this standing up to the J. Coles and the Kendricks and the Drakes? Is it world stage level, versus like, oh, well, like Hip Hop DX will dig it. You know what I'm saying? Nah. But is it world stage level? Like, because I'm not competing with the other West Coast rappers. I'm competing with the Kendricks and the J. And I think that's the dope part about the youth, is like, they're like, especially the creator, like Eric Anthony's like, yo, these dudes they coming out the gate like they're, you know what I mean? There's this it's like watching Steph Curry play ball, right? Like he's like this like gentle, innocent, like, oh, it's all good. He's smiling, he light skinned, like the whole deal. But yo, he is a Kobe.
He
is a
it.
Michael.
He's a killer, man.
He might be better than Michael, but
he's
you know.
He's a,
Might be.
he may become someday. But he's a fierce competitor. Like, he has that thing inside of him, but it's masqueraded in this youthful, fun, big smiles. He's a family guy, right? And I think that's dope, and I think that's valuable. So
I definitely think it's healthy for the end of the day. I just have to make sure I don't take my own self too seriously with it.
As long as you're open to the same critique, and I think that's the one thing too, is that, you know, what your generation is probably going to have, and not you in particular, but what a lot of them going to have struggles with is, you know, sort of, because you can do things like physically delete a tweet of negative comment. You could physically delete a negative Facebook post. It's almost like you can get rid of the negative feedback and the negative opinions of you. You don't have to consume it the way that somebody, if you met one of your heroes back in the 90s or the early 2000s and he told you, like, your beats suck, you got to live with that.
Yeah.
You know, there's not this level of delusion as there is now, in that you can create whatever world you want. And, you know, I'm no different from it. Like, I really am very adamant about, you know, getting rid of the negative energy when it comes to especially certain content that is meant to help people. I know there's certain people that are disruptors that are basically trying to, you know,
they're just gonna hate on.
It is not even just hate on me. They're literally there to disrupt the connection between the people that I'm really trying to talk to. The trolls, like, I understand the point of them.
The trolls.
I understand, but what I think your generation is going to deal with is being able to take the same criticism, because they all got opinions. They got strong opinions, and I love it. But I think that when you turn it back and you give them an honest opinion, the way that they internalize it, because they don't have to internalize it on a daily basis, because most of their interactions online is like, you said something mean about me, I could delete that now, and now it never existed. Out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
But when somebody says something to you that stays with you, and I think that they have a harder time sometimes of dealing with that. But as long as you're open to that knowledge, man, as long as you're open to the same critique, and you realize that, you know, I'm giving you this feedback, but I'm not giving this feedback saying that I'm perfect. All I'm saying is that I have two ears just like somebody else, and my opinion matters, and I just want to express that to you.
I think there's definitely got to be the connection to understand value. I think that's the my own generation, younger generations, like, we're still trying to figure out where our value is.
Right.
And so that's why it's hard for us to take the humble approach and be like, yo, I get why you're trying to critique me right now.
Right.
Because you're trying to get me closer to what my actual value is.
Yeah, and it's gonna take time, because it took me time. Even though, you know, even with the lack of, you know, social media when I was early 20s. I mean, we still have Black Planet. I know I sound old. Black Planet and MySpace.
Still don't know what that is.
But yeah, you don't want to know what it is. It was never anything to brag home about. But even with that, you know, there is that feeling of building up a thick skin, and I think that's very important to anybody's character, especially a creative's character, is that if you plan on having long-term success, you got to be prepared to, you know, take even the love and the hate with a grain of salt. But the way that you deal with these things is really going to determine how much of a journey how fulfilling of a journey it's going to be for you.
Do you have any examples, like something that have specifically made you more humble, or been able to receive criticism well? Like any like specific points in your life?
You know, the way that I deal with negative situations is that in the past, and I've done it bad in the past. In the past, my first instinct was, I'm going to prove you wrong. You know, like, you said something about your beats suck. Okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I would drive on that energy, and it would drive me for about 2 or 3 months. And then I'll get up and I'm like, I don't even have this person in my circle anymore. Who am I doing this for? So when I learned that this is not sustaining, then I started saying why to myself a lot more. The more I started asking myself why, the more I started realizing that these opinions are going to come and go. Like, they're going to rear their ugly head. It's almost like an annoying little brother, like, you know, it's your little brother. You love him. He's annoying, but he's your little brother. But same thing with disappointment, same thing with negative feedback. It's just going to occur because, you know, when I realized that most negative feedback is not even really about the thing that they're critiquing. Most negative feedback is a reflection of what they're feeling on the inside. When I really understood that concept, because the people that give you constructive criticism, really think about the people who really make an impact on you. How many of those people were actually, you felt it was coming from a bad place? Now, some people give you tough love. Don't get it wrong. But for the most part, people who have given me advice, they've done it in such a tactful way that it was like, yo, I'm all ears to anything that you got to tell me. Mm-hmm. But somebody who comes in and says, you suck, do it this way, 2 months from then, I may even listen, but 2 months after, I would never listen to them again when I found out that, wait a minute, my way works and I have to deal with you. So I think that honestly taking chances on yourself and honestly failure, man, that's something else too, is that I think even my generation is just people in general, man, afraid of failure. The more that you get opportunities to get out there and just fall on your butt and have it happen again and again and again, and you have a track record for it, but you're still able to play the game. I think when you look back, it won't hurt so much. You won't look at these situations if you get negative feedback and say, man, that's going to break. My favorite producer said that this, and this. Like, I remember when I first started really doing shows, Be Real sent me an email basically critiquing my performance, critiquing my music and how the mix was bad and all of that. And I'm like, the reason it didn't crush me was because he did it so tactful and so cool that it was like, yo, I'm all ears. So next time I see you, I'm going to ask you more questions. So I think, honestly, the way to do it is just, you got to get out there and you got to honestly face it. I know it sounds cliche, but you got to face it head on. You got to always be ready for failure and get excited by what Grant Cardone calls new problems. New problems mean that you're getting into uncharted ground.
Not to totally switch gears, right? But it's interesting to me how, like, truth is universal. And we're talking about this idea of finding value, right? Of listening to feedback, of refining ourselves, right? And the whole thing really goes back to being humble enough to receive criticism and humble enough to serve.
Absolutely.
Right. And the interesting thing about this is, Jesus said one of the most groundbreaking things about leadership, right? The disciples came to him and they're like, yo, who's going to be the greatest, right? We want to be the greatest. And they're arguing amongst themselves, who's going to be the greatest. And he tells them, like, the greatest among you is going to be the one who serves, right? The first shall become last, right? Become like little children, right? And so it's this recurring theme.
Listen to the kids.
Listen to the kids, right?
Listen to the kids, bro.
It's this recurring theme that we see him, I think, all throughout the gospel, right? Servant leadership, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a position, you're not supposed to rule over people, right? You're supposed to serve and inspire and encourage people,
right?
And this whole time we haven't even unpacked that side of things, right? But that this is actually a universal principle,
absolutely,
right? That in a capitalistic society, the person who adds the most amount of value to someone wins.
Isn't that the irony of life in general, that 95% of the people that you come in contact with are going to be about self,
right?
But and I read a quote from Jeff Olson from a book called The Slight Edge, and he said that 95% of the people that we see are critics. They're cynics. They're going to tell you what you can or can't do. And when you do it, then they're like, oh, yeah, you did it, But 95% of people are critics. He said, but in our culture, we erect statues. We don't erect statues for critics. Yeah. 95% of people on this earth would not get a statue or be remembered like that. But who do we make statues for? It's those rare figures that make an impact and have literally served their lives for the general public. Right. It says 5%.
The ones that aren't trying to build a statue.
The Dr. Kings, you know what I mean? Like the people that you just can't say, oh, he's another Dr. King. You're not gonna say that, about somebody. Yeah. Like, it's, and I think that when people realize that, man, 95% is literally. Most people, that's pretty much everybody that I come in contact with, and there's only a small amount of people who will actually get what's going on. I think that once you realize that is, and that's how I felt in December 2015, bro. Like, I really felt that way when I read that book after having that show. I was like, how is it that This is happening on this level. And mind you, I'm thankful it didn't happen. Like, I thank God every day it didn't happen when I was sitting in a mansion and I'm looking around like, okay, I finally got it. What now? Because there's been times where I would go visit, producers or whatnot, or, other artists who actually achieved that.
Yeah.
And they have it. And I'm sitting in their house and I'm like, yo, this house feels so lonely of love and a home. Yeah. And then, I would go visit a Murs and it's like Murs does it smart. He lives very smart. And so I'm looking at the house. I'm like, yo, this feels more like home than anywhere else. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, what vision do you see for your success? And I think that when I went to go visit Murs and we were shooting the videos for the Shut Your Trap project and I saw the house, I was like, yo, this is actualizing dreams. Like, I'm touching the walls and, he probably gonna think that's weird saying that, but I'm like literally like looking around and saying, this is what this work can bring you. Yeah. And this is what it feels like when it's right. I think it made me like have a reality check. And I was like, it's not all about this stuff.
Right.
It's literally about what can you do that people feel like, yo, you've made an impact on me. And I tell you, even for a figure like Murs, I've been to probably 40, 50 something shows of Murs, and I tell you, every show you see a mother who was a fan of his when he was in Living Legends in the early 90s. You see her daughter that graduated from college who's at the shows, and you see the little sister of that particular young lady who is now a Murs fan because he's talking about something that is value to multiple generations. Right. He talks about love. He talks about relationships. Yeah. He talks about things that apply to every single generation. I think that kind of stuff, you're literally becoming a servant of the people. You're going on tour and you're engaging them. You're making them smile. I've seen Murs walk up to a fan that had his vinyl in his hand, walks behind the fan, taps on his shoulder and says, "Would you mind if I sign that for you?" Yeah. Like, listen to the wording of that. Would you mind if I Murs, who you're obviously here for, would you mind if I sign that for you? Yeah. When I saw him do it, and we looked at him as a leader because this is his tour, and we being, I was at the time, this label I was with, Black Cloud, I'm like, if Murs can do that, what does that now leave everything, for us? I remember one time when I first worked at Quiznos, I didn't like the owner there, but who worked there. But one of the most powerful things he ever did was on the first day, I was in the middle of a rush and I was like putting sandwiches together, whatever. He's taps me on the shoulder and he says, "Duan," that's my government name, by the way. He taps me on the shoulder and I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he's like, "You see this?" He points to a piece of paper on the ground. He picks it up and he puts it in the trash. He says, "I'm the owner of this building and I just put this trash inside the trash." Yeah. He said, "If I am willing to do this, what do you think I expect everybody else here?" Yeah, that's good. One of the most powerful things, and it's so simple, but it's like, if the leader is willing to be a servant, and is willing to in a way that Jesus was willing to wash the feet and willing to do these things that people think are below them. Yeah. If the leader is willing to do that, what do you think you're responsible of doing?
Or if you're willing to tweet back.
And you know what?
Or if you're willing to follow back, bro. Right? You did a great artist marketing thing on the follower ratio, right? And that convicted me. Like, there's this real thing of like,
so real,
but and that really changed my heart. Like, man, like
that's crazy.
We need to actually serve and lead by example and all the things, right? Yeah, yeah. And so if you're not going to genuinely care about the 1,000 followers you gave, right? I mean, that God has given you, right? Whatever level, the 500, you're not genuinely going to care to engage those people and add value to those people in whatever platform, right? Real. Like, what makes you think that you're going to get the 10,000 or the 100,000 or the million?
Because it has to happen. The thing is, I think most of us look at these numbers. We look at other people's success stories, and immediately we internalize it. Like, how is that going to happen for me? Right. It's just a human thing. I don't think it's a very selfish thing. I think it's a human thing that people look at somebody's success and like, that's great for them. Man, like, what does that put me at? Yeah. I remember when I first, started experiencing the whole Odd Future Tyler thing or whatever, and I saw him at, I think, like 15,000 fans, and then he jumped on the late night show, and it was like 100,000 fans, and I'm like, is it going to happen like that for me? Like, it's just something that mentally comes to your head. I don't know why it comes to you, but it happened, and it was like, that right there was something that was a part of the industry. Once again, that's one of the industry rules that I was basically given, that you got to make it look good for appearance sake. You got to make sure your ratios are on point and people are not going to take you serious. Right. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I knew that was absolutely ridiculous, but if you want to play the game, that's the game you got to play. And for me, man, I can't. I know myself, and I know what I'm not able to do. And one thing I'm not able to do, if somebody were to see me at my merch booth, come to me and say, Curtis King, your music changed my life. And if I would have turned my back on them the same way that most people on Twitter turn their back on their fans, like, how would I feel? That would bother me literally for probably the rest of my life that I did that. And that's very dramatic, but it's like, if it feels like that there, why wouldn't it feel the same way on social media? It's still human beings. It's still people there engaging you. It's people that taking the time out of their day where there's 1,000,001 distractions on any social network. For them to take the time, and I don't care, write 140 characters, that is a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I took this YouTube optimization class, and he was like, one of the first rules is like, treat every comment on your YouTube as gold.
Yep.
1, because you're getting paid for it, and 2, because that person took the time to pay you.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it just because to pay you. They did it because they honestly had an impact from your video. So I think that kind of stuff. Once again, we're talking about hip hop rules.
Yeah.
Your ratios. That's hip hop rules. You know what I mean? And I fell for it, bro. I fell for it strong.
I think as a young person right now, I'm learning already, like, copying marketing strategies and marketing goals is really not what's going to break me as a new producer. Like,
that's real.
At the end of the day, I have to be valuable. I have to add value, and I have to have a servant heart. Yeah. Not like just servant acts, but a servant heart. Like, it just has to come out of me that I am a servant. Yeah.
And you can't. And you know what I say too? It won't be for the sake of being a good person. It won't always be that. For some people, you have to realize, and that's the only thing I love about Ty Lopez. He's real about that, because there's certain human beings who, even though it sounds great on paper, it sounds like it's the Christian thing to do, and it's very like, you can be a good person, you'll be fulfilled by giving to people. There are times where, like, God put me in a situation where, literally, I kid you not, like, about a year and something ago, I got so frustrated with being broke that I stood up. And mind you, I'm in a better financial situation than I have ever been in my life. And I just happened to be broke. Some things came back and forth. And I stood up and I was like, I'm too smart to be this broke. Yeah. I was like, how did this happen? Yeah. And at that moment that I was down to my last dollar, I had nothing. In my mind, I said, what is the hardest thing for me to do right now? And I started thinking, I said, what, give? And it was absolutely the hardest thing. The moment that I said that, I jumped inside of my Facebook, and this dude who was spamming me his music, I sat there and had a conversation with him. And I said, I come to you on respect. I come to you and I want to help you, right? And so I'm talking to him and I'm telling him how spamming is not the way. And he's like receptive to it. And he's like, I feel where you're coming from. He's like, yo, you genuinely helped me. I kid you not even 5 minutes later, I get a transaction for $300. Yeah. And it's like one of those moments where you look up in the sky and you're like, God, I hear you. Yeah, like, I know. Cool. I'm not I know people like, oh, it could be a coincidence. No, I look at that and I say, I hear you. Like, it's almost like you say, like you talking to your homie, okay, I feel you. Like, I see what you mean when you know you in the wrong. So when you're able to get down to your last dollar and you're able to still think about what to give, even John C. Maxwell in the book Failing Forward, he says, when you're at your most depressed, he said, what I suggest you do when you're in the house and you turn all the lights off and you're so depressed, he says, run out the house as fast as you can, go to a train track and find somebody you can save. Because in your mind, when you're helping somebody else, you're not thinking about all the things that are happening to you. You're thinking about being the best for that person. When you gain that win from helping that person, you take that energy back and you're able to transfer that over to whatever you're trying to work on. So now when I get in that situation, I'm like, yo, who can I help right now? Because I'm hurting right now. Who can I help?
So I think this is a great place to land, and I think what we're really talking about is faithfulness.
Oh, absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Like you were faithful with the one dude that was in your inbox strapping you up a wall, right? Like
I know we all get those.
Like you've been faithful. You've been faithful in serving a lot of not so great rappers. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know, Anthony Cruz, ladies and gentlemen. Interrupting. It's okay though. You're good. Has it been an hour? We're wrapping up anyway. It's awesome.
It's my fault. Every time anybody get a podcast, I always run over.
But look, being faithful with the little things, right? Jesus said, "How are you going to be faithful with the big things if you can't be faithful?"
So real.
Things, right? Yeah. And so, in closing, we want to hear from you guys. Tweet us, leave a comment. Tell us, what can you be more faithful with right now? Not what you want to be more faithful with when you sell more beats or when you sell more records or when you get more followers, but what do you know that right now what God has entrusted you with right now, what can you be more faithful with? Let us know. Shoot us a tweet. Curtis King with 2 S's.
Hey, please, 2 S's.
Ruslan KD. Eric Kingsley with 1K.
1K.
King's Dream ENT, of course. But thank you guys, man. This has been great. We got to have Curtis back for another episode. We went over on time a little bit, but I think it's okay. Anthony Cruz crashed the party.
Hey.
Thank you guys for tuning in, man. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys are following this guy. Follow his artist. Yeah, I got to follow his Artist Marketing 101. I literally consume them every Tuesday.
Oh, man.
They're so inspiring.
Oh, boy.
I even watch the producer
Motivation.
And I'm not even a producer. That's how good the content is. So this guy's out here.
Curtis King TV.
Curtis King TV.
Trying to be a
Subscribe
producer,
to his YouTube page. And he just has a wealth amount of knowledge that he's acquired through 10 years of being in this game, actually like being in this game, landing the big placement. So make sure you guys are following him, support what he's doing, new music on the way. Thank you guys for tuning in, man, and we appreciate